Buckle up because we might be at the brink of an EV price war. Tesla started it, Ford followed, then Lucid. Today, I'm talking about the chaos. We'll see how a price war will hurt EV startup and why Wall Street is concerned this domino effect spells out doomsday for suppliers. But why all of this will be a good thing for American consumers. Blame it on the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA for short. Last August 2022, the Biden administration approved the $437 billion act. By the way, if you haven't seen my video on how and why the government is pushing us to electrify, check it out. Now, basically, the U.S. incentivized car makers and Americans to electrify by offering a $7,500 tax credit towards the purchase of certain electric vehicles. Electric passenger cars under $55,000 and electric SUVs, trucks, and vans under $80,000 qualified. But one of the problems with the regulation was how it defined an SUV. The reason is the IRS that was defining it was using old standards. For example, Tesla said the Model Y was an SUV, and since it was priced at $65,990, it should have qualified for the tax credit. But in the IRS's opinion, it was an electric passenger car which has a lower price cap of $55,000, and therefore said the Model Y was ineligible. Tesla's hands were tied. So Tesla shocked the industry by lowering the price of the Model Y to nearly $53,000. It thereby made it eligible for the tax credit. Soon after, Ford followed suit and lowered its Mustang Mach-E. Its cut ranged between $600 to $5,900. So the new starting price ranged between $46,000 and $64,000, depending on the trim. Ford acknowledged it did this to stay competitive, even though it meant that some of the Mach-E trims wouldn't be profitable on a per-unit basis. In other words, Ford was willing to take a loss on their own dime just to compete. If this is the beginning of a price war, I'll tell you who'll get hurt real bad. It's the U.S. startups. I'm talking about startups like Rivian and Lucid. They're already losing money as it is. So a price war will make it even harder for them to grab market share, especially during this time of high inflation and high interest rates. You can see that Lucid is already on the edge. Lucid is the luxury market. Its cars are expensive, and most Americans can't afford them as it is. In fact, cars exceeded the maximum price threshold to be eligible for the federal tax credit. The Lucid Air Touring, for example, retails at $107,400 as a base model. Now that's pretty much double the $55,000 price cap allowed by the Inflation Reduction Act for passenger cars. Just forget about the Air Grand Touring, which starts at $138,000. Anyway, soon after Tesla and Ford slashed their prices, Lucid came forth and offered to give customers a $7,500 credit on certain variants of the Lucid Air. Basically, it's like a $7,500 discount. Funny enough, just a week or so after Tesla and Ford slashed prices, the IRS updated and broadened its definition and standards for the federal tax credit for SUVs. And that's how the Model Y only just recently became eligible as an SUV for the federal tax credit. In response, a week or so after, Tesla raised up the price of the Model Y yet again. Well, this time the price increase wasn't as big as the price cut. Nevertheless, it's funny how volatile EV prices are getting, even more than ever before. It's almost like stock market now with its daily up and downs. Overall, though, this is good news for Americans. I mean, now the Model Y is cheaper than its original price, and on top of that, you get the tax credit. But it also benefits Tesla. Here's the thing. Almost immediately as the Tesla price cuts were announced, the Model Y became the second most researched vehicle in America. Just a week before, it was the 70th most researched vehicle. Talk about a big leap. Obviously, the price cuts piqued consumer interest. Ford also saw a positive impact on its own brand soon after its price cut. Ford customers commented that they especially appreciated Ford's decision to reimburse them for the price differences on the Mach-E's. So where do we go from here? Did Tesla ignite a price war, or will this all soon dissipate and die down? Actually, not all car makers are on board to join the price war. Take Volkswagen, for example. CEO Oliver Bloom says that Volkswagen has a clear pricing strategy and it's not leveraging prices. Rather, it's focusing on its reputation. He also said that Volkswagen's goal of being a global EV leader should be achieved through profitable growth. Even more surprising is Ford. So far, Ford hasn't announced a price cut on the F-150 Lightning electric truck. My guess is probably it's so popular and high demand that Ford doesn't need to lower the price. Despite the fact that Ford US cut the price of its Mustang Mach-E lineup, Ford across the pond in Europe says it won't cut prices. For example, Ford France says the Mach-E price cuts were only specific to the North American market, and it plans to keep the Mach-E price stable in France. And if that are the Ford plans for France, well, Ford customers in Europe should probably expect the Mach-E Mach-E's price to remain steady in other European countries too. In a way, that makes sense for Ford Europe not to follow Ford North America. Reason is, Ford is able to deliver the Mustang Mach-E's in France in a shorter time and in a majority of configurations. Plus, Ford's largest European markets are in the UK and Germany. By the way, speaking of France, another EV maker who says they won't be joining the price war is Renault. Believe it or not, the Renault Megane E-Tech outsold the Tesla Model 3 in Europe last September. So Renault is a bigger competitor in the EV game than most people realize. Basically, Renault believes that most car makers won't match Tesla's discounts because they can't afford to. As it is, the profit margin is already pretty tight for mainstream EVs, whereas Tesla's a luxury brand and it can afford the slash price. Then there are car makers who haven't commented on whether they'll cut prices, but they said it's not completely off the table. Take GM, for example. CEO Mary Barra said in an earnings call that GM vehicles are priced where they need to be at the moment, but she did say that GM is monitoring the market to make sure that it remains competitive. At any rate, supply chain suppliers are also on edge because an EV price war will impact them directly. Look at Tesla suppliers, for example. Word on the street is that Tesla suppliers have already started bracing themselves, anticipating pressure to cut the prices themselves. Tesla's chief financial officer, Zach Kirkhorn, said that Tesla will attack every cost, including the supply chain. Actually, these aren't just rumors. In China, one supplier said Tesla's targeting cutting costs by 10% to keep up with the competition. For now, there's no concrete news from Tesla suppliers like battery makers Panasonic, Cattle, or LG Energy, but I'd say that's probably because of confidentiality agreements. Now, putting pressure on suppliers is nothing new. One unnamed Tesla executive said that during the pandemic, Tesla focused more on delivery and less on pricing. Apparently, Tesla was even willing to pay more to get parts faster. But now that Tesla prices have been lowered, it wouldn't be a surprise if Tesla may add pressure on its suppliers. But here's the problem. As it is, a lot of suppliers are struggling financially, and they might not be able to handle all added pressure from Tesla. According to one study, car makers' profit margins were almost 3 percentage points higher than suppliers in the third quarter of last year. Look at what happened to one supplier that has Tesla as one of its biggest customers. I'm talking about Jissing North America. Last year, Jissing filed for bankruptcy. That came down partly to high commodity prices and high labor costs. Point is, suppliers are already tight squeezed. But now let's look at Rivian. It has some 14,000 employees, or rather they had 14,000. A few weeks ago, Rivian announced it's laying off 6% of its workforce. Now mind you, this isn't its first layoff. Last year, the company also laid 6% off. This is an EV maker that had one of the biggest IPOs of 2021. But the company's been struggling since then to meet its targets due to manufacturing and supply chain problems, falling cash reserves, and a weak economy. This latest measure is one of its ways to reach profitability. Right now, Rivian is focusing on upping production of its R1 trucks and EDV delivery vans that it builds for Amazon. It's also supplying the smaller R2 vehicle platform. Like most of the younger brands in the EV market, a price war is the last thing it needs. Rivian has seen its stock plummet over 75% over the course of the year after they went public. Rivian can't afford to cut prices like Tesla, and so it's rethinking its expansion plans. By the end of last September, Rivian had about $13.8 billion in cash remaining. That might not sound so bad, but actually it is. In the first 3 quarters of 2022, Rivian reported losses of $5 billion. And Rivian also said it narrowly missed its full-year target of producing 25,000 vehicles last year. If this trend continues, Rivian will bleed out all its cash long before the internal combustion engine ban gets enforced and the EV market really takes off. The thing is, Rivian's problem isn't consumer demand. Rather, it's having problems on the supply side and with production. Actually, last year, Rivian bumped up its prices by 20%. Well, that sent its stock prices tumbling, and CEO RJ Scaringe ended up issuing a public apology. Anyway, whether a price war has started or whether it'll die down, only time will tell. For now, it's good news for you as a consumer. Honestly, right now is one of the best times to buy an EV new or used because for the first time since November 2021, the average used EV on the market is now below $50,000. And if the price war continues, prices should drop even further. The irony is that in recent times, car prices have been on the rise. Right now, to get your hands on a new car, you're looking at an average sticker price of almost $50,000. That's why some analysts think more car makers will likely follow with their own price cuts. They might not outright say that Tesla is the reason for their price cuts, but they can't deny that Tesla has brought on the pressure. Right now, major car brands are betting big on electrification. This year, even more battery electric cars will join the market. The EV market is booming, and car giants are trying to win new customers as fast as possible. Reason is loyalty is king in the car industry. Once you convert a consumer from a combustion engine to an electric car, you'll likely keep them for decades to come. That's why now is the time to grab market share. I tell you, this year 2023 will be a pivotal year for the EV industry. But now you tell me, will an EV price war move you to buy an EV? Please share by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.